It's a way of accessing international artists and bringing Bangladeshi artists out of the country, thereby answering a need for exchanges in order to support the development of a local yet internationally informed art scene. So Triangle also supported Britto by securing funding and by helping in the development of the organization, providing practical helps in developing the administrative as well as thought-provoking plans, just that time what we were thinking about, at a time when there were no other similar models of practice in the country. So over the years, Britto has grown to answer the needs of the local community of artists. Having network was a support and ally in developing Britto, but ultimately the point of being in a network is that we are able to do things independently without being alone. Connecting with South Asian Network for Artists, which we call SANA, S-A-N-A, is part of developing an ambitious program for ourselves. This additional network under Triangle had supported us being unbreakable, doing non-stop projects over the last few years. Eventually, outside Triangle Network, we happen to be well connected with many other international organizations by this time. So we, apart from all this, the big events that we organized in Bangladesh, we try to look at the communities, different communities in remote areas. So we are talking about the network here, but there's also a network because we are a very new country, only 40 years old, and we are separated from Pakistan or India. So we have our three sides is Indian border, and one is Myanmar. So Myanmar is out of anything, you can't really be connected with Myanmar. But we are well connected with India. And there are several ethnic groups living along, I think, next to the border. They are, when we were separated, it was not only us, it's painful for them that they are separated from their own community. Because when the border was going through their villages, one single community is divided by that border. So what we thought that we will go through those border areas and work with the community over there. So that is the thing we are doing these days. But in need of own space in Dhaka, Britto took a long mission in collecting donations from the coordinators, a fund from Arts Collaboratory, and loans from Robert Loader. Thanks, Robert. And Mahbubur Rahman. I am not going to thank Mahbub. Mahbub is part of it. Okay. Britto finally have a permanent space in March 2011, where we are setting up a gallery now, an office cum kitchen, and a guest room. We're having the opening of our gallery in January 2012. So international exchanges of curatorial exhibitions are welcomed at our space. So you all are welcomed to do something. That's what we are looking for now. So Britto continued to develop and with the mission of connecting to the international art scene and become a way of showcasing Bangladeshi artists abroad. We were able to represent Bangladesh at the Venice Biennale this year. Within a rather limited support and situation, we are able to make our national pavilion for the first time in the history of the Venice Biennale in 116 years. And there are so many organizations who helped us to do it. We must say Arts Collaboratory here, and Prince Claus Fund, and Beximco is a Bangladeshi company. Bengal Foundation was there with us, and lots of suggestions from Alessio to push Prince Claus or Arts Collaboratory. So at the same time, Britto continues to be an artist-run and artist-led project. All the experiences and successes are there to support its mission, which is to bring artists together and to put Britto art scene on the map. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I tried to explain.
Zenzele, are you happy to go next? Go on.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Insaka Artists is an initiative that began in 2002 through a website training program initiated by Trango. And I must say, Danda was, I think, very instrumental in that birth of Insaka. But previously, there used to be Imbile International Artist Workshop, and this is where Trango came into Zambia in 1993. And the first initiator was Anna Kindersley. She coordinated the Mbile workshops, the genesis of Mbile workshops. And then from 1993 to 1999, Mbile came to a close. And then 2002, we kicked off with a website training program. And there were only two of us, myself and Vincencio Piri, was from the Mbile organizing group. And then we finished our website, which we launched at the end of 2002. And then I think there was a persuasion from Danda and Alessio to sort of us organizing a workshop, which was for me was a very, very first time I was getting involved in these Trango workshops. And I must say, Trango really helped us to sort of put in some seed money, but otherwise it was a zero budget kind of program. But we managed to pull some miracles, and we managed to host the first Insaka workshop in 2003, which was quite dynamic because we're trying to break the first conception of just coming to the workshop, splash your paint on canvas, and then it ends there. And people have this problem. I think Danda alluded to the open day problem or crisis, where artists are working towards market forces instead of concentrating to discover new processes of working. So there was some new forms of expression, and one of them was a body print, which involved two artists who collaborated, one from South Africa, Norman O'Flynn, based in Cape Town, and also Lutanda Mwamba. And this particular work, I think, got us into trouble with the law. And in 2004, the Drug Enforcement Agency raided our offices. We were renting a small little office. And then, because they found the work was well documented in video and also in photography. So we're arrested and charged for possessing obscene material, which was quite a thing. And we felt a bit orphaned because there wasn't any group or organization which was really like trying to come out and voice the concern of our predicament. But eventually we were charged and put on a suspended sentence for about 6 months. And then people thought we were over, but we persisted. 2004, we put up another big Insaka workshop. I think it was one of the biggest, and we had diverse participation from different countries, as far as Vietnam, Malaysia, also Japan, Germany, and other countries. And we networked very well with Kuona, also the Johannesburg initiative, Back Factory. We also networked with Zimbabwe. So we gained our momentum, and 2005 again we came up with another workshop. So far we've held 5 Insaka workshops and the 2 residence programs. And our situation is that we have grown or overgrown to such a level where we've acquired quite a number of things along the way. You know, office space is, I think, the greatest need at the moment, because when we're setting up our residence program, we had to get some materials, some facilities for residence program. So we had to buy also furniture, we had to buy equipment, of which at the moment, we don't have a physical concrete space where to put these things, but we are trying by all means to acquire some space where we can develop or build a permanent structure. Because, as you might know, these workshops, they start very loosely, and well, maybe it's cheaper, but along the way, you become a solid structure, and you develop to an extent where you need someone to be in the office, you need someone to do some communication tasks, you need someone to coordinate even the local artists within the country. Yeah, so I think that's all about Insaka. Thank you.
Yala. That's 9 minutes. You've just lost one.
I wanted actually to do the whole 4, but it was so loud. Anyway. Hello. Hello. Oh, maybe I do it? I don't know. Am I going to get slides? Okay. I can start anyway. So I am part of a group that does a space or a project called Makan. And it's in Amman right now. The physical space is in Amman. And it started in 2003. Basically Ula Khalidi started it. She came to the city, Amman, which was meant to be her home city, but she was really a stranger, and she was trying to figure out what she wanted to do with it. Which led to her finding a space and calling it Makan, and very immediately turning in or requesting help or the assistance of advice of her immediate network, family and friends, which remains one of the main networks that we actually involve in Makan or rely on. Especially that it's sort of there's an absence of dedicated networks for such a space or such an idea or project. So we had to come up with it as we went. Gradually, Makan itself attracted people, and they became yet another network of the space. And this is a sort of second member of the team today. You saw earlier pictures of her in Davide's film, that's Samah. And I sort of joined in 2004. So this is the team that works the space. Eventually, with time, I mean, in between also us becoming a team, this is sort of the team today, but things happened along the way. It's been 8 years. There are people who have been part of Makan or are still, and we call them the floaters. And they are yet another network. They're around the world, and they do different things, and they come in and out or have been involved in different ways throughout. Meanwhile, I get... What is it? So, meanwhile, these are the floaters. You might recognize yourself. Meanwhile, Makan, over the 8 years, has actually sort of invented and reinvented itself and defines and redefines itself all the time. We're happy with that and unhappy with it. It's a struggle. It's difficult. But we sort of feel that probably this sort of question, what is Makan exactly and what does it do, is always going to be a question. There are minutes when we really know, and then the second minute we don't. Meanwhile, we have events very similar to many of such spaces around the region and maybe the internationally, where we have a residency program, we have exhibits in the space and outside the space. We work with other regional spaces and international spaces as well, and invite artists to talk or to work in the studios. Recently, Makan has yet another set of questions to figure out related to the situation in the region. Things are it seems like there's a revolution taking place, and it's out of control, and it's very much a thing that we respond to emotionally and really, but don't know very much what to do with it, and our program sort of tries to work with that. And so kind of our role is, even with that, we're trying to figure out what we're doing. And then, these are the pictures I go through really quickly.
Of Makan.
And this is Makan. This is Makan, the space and the activities that we have there. Okay, so we arrive at one point where, basically, Makan also started a similar residency or workshop adopted from the triangle model. It all started with our colleague and friend going to Lebanon to the workshop that Ghassan has organized, Aywa, and then which was in itself born from Brazier. So we're kind of down that, lineage. And we have offsprings ourselves as well. So basically, a few years ago, 2007, I believe, we had, Jill came, Alessio came to visit Ghassan too, and we talked about this amazing workshop that's taken place in Lebanon, and our colleague Uraib loved it, and that we must have it. So we started to organize Shatana. We had it over 3 years, annually over 3 years, 2007, 2008, and 2009. And then we paused. It was a lot of work and a lot of money, and we were thinking, okay, so why exactly are we doing this? To be honest, it was a lot of fun, and we had a lot of food, and our network expanded yet even further. This is sort of like to just adjust the cities or towns or countries that we had people come to these workshops, and eventually, actually, some of us went there, and people that met, you know how these events, they kind of like have their own offshoots. Couple of minutes, very good. This is Shatana, panoramic view of the village up in the north, which is a very small village, and that's where we have our workshops and where we invite all these artists. This is the team that works the workshop. Quick pictures of Shatana, the artists, the food. Again, yes, drinks, budget for alcohol, absolutely important, a lot of food. I agree, dancing and artwork. You know, artists are very hardworking, and they do a lot of work. And we also have an open day, and it is very controversial. At the moment, Makan has a new phase. Basically, 2 of the 3 members have traveled, myself included, to San Francisco. So Samah is in Amman today, and we're in San Francisco, Ola and myself. And the geography has, of course, introduced a completely different element to how we work and why we work and how we want the space to change, or our activities, how they are shaped by this. I might have finished.
That would be a good spot.
Thank you.
Ana Maria.
They have to end this first.
First, I want to say thank you all the Triangle Network team for this invitation, and thank you for being here. And I have to say sorry for my English, because of course I will do lots of mistakes. I will present the work of the artist collective Elena Producciones, and also my work. We are based in Cali. I mean, I live between Berlin and London, but the collective work is based in Cali, Colombia. We are 2 institutions in Cali, part of the Triangle Network, that is Elena Producciones and Lugar a Dudas. Sally Mirachi from Lugar a Dudas is also here in this meeting. First, I will present the Festival de Performance de Cali. The Festival de Performance is an event organized by the collective since 1998. The first festival was organized by the artists Juan Mejia and Wilson Diaz, and we, the other members of Elena, were in this time only students. Elena's group decided to continue with the festival because of the impact it had for the city in this moment, and because of the model it proposed for the city. The festival is presented during a week, and its program is based on the structure that has been built during its trajectory, exploring different possibilities for the projects of the artists. It hosts exhibition, conferences, public art workshops, and a day of performances that take place normally on Saturday at the end of the week, from 9 in the morning until midnight. The artists of the festival are selected through an open call, through a local and international open call. The festival is documented also in video and photography, building a huge archive that had been presented in different exhibitions like Cali en el Espejo, in our gallery in Vancouver, curated by Michel Faguet. I am saying this because it was a question from the beginning if we should document all this performance and then translate it into another language. And I mean, we agree with this statement because we present more the relationship and the platform and more than only images. So it's very important for us, this documentation. The festival is basically is possible because the structure of collaborative and self-organized work that is, it can only happen possibly in such a city like Cali. All the events in the festival are for free and also are distributed in various public and private space in the city. We have no space. We are like nomads, and we try to negotiate with the spaces, their meanings, and their political and economic conditions. For example, the second festival was in the sport hall of a public school in Cali. The third, fourth, and fifth festival took place in the Museum of Modern Art in Cali, the sixth in an old liquor fabric, and the seventh in an old seed fabric. You say arena?
Yes.
Okay. Elena was basically born as a critical response of participation and research in a local context. I mean, this is a very complex context because the colonial structure still exists, and many practices have maintained these structures. The lack in the information source, the absence of academic and professional spaces, and the precarious research and their interaction are conditions that don't allow the development of other models. So I have to say also that this precarious condition and this economy of poverty is what gave us the possibility to think in new models of produced art. I have to say that in Cali, there is only one gallery, one art gallery, and people, artists in Cali start to be part of the market only like 2 years ago or this year. So the festival has been proposed from this kind of strategies to promote the work of the artists, but also it tried to expand art to a broader arena of community practices and civil initiatives. So yeah, we are seeing some images recorded in various performance festival. We have been 3 times supported by Triangle, by Prince Claus Foundation, and we have done partnership with Triangle Network since 2004. Now I will present another program we have, that is the Escuela Móvil de Saberes y Práctica Social, that can be translated Mobile School of Knowledge and Social Practice, and is a pedagogical component. This program has been run for a few years, trying to get in the reality of different communities, using a methodology more based in the experience and in the enthusiasm than through the full system of cultural exchange. During the festival, this component, for example, enables the younger generation to be part of the festival. I mean, because we do talks and workshops in different schools in Cali. We started with this program traveling to the south of Colombia, paradoxically in the Salón de Artistas format, because I have to say Colombia still has a Salón de Artistas like 100 years ago, but the government still tries to adapt this format to new models, but it still has the name. Okay. So for we were traveling to the south of Colombia, exploring like different community practices, and I have to say that also for the festival, there were many artists who proposed us workshops as pieces of art, as art. So we began to accept this kind of possibilities, like bringing like kind of agency strategies for the people or for the public sphere. So this format, like that are workshops with communities, started to be like a mobile school in our program. I will finish in 1 minute. And finally, I will speak about the program we have in partnership with Triangle Network, that is the workshop, and we did our first workshop in 2010 in Juan Chaco, Ladrilleros y La Barra in the Pacific coast of Colombia. I have to say that we choose this place because the historical importance that it has for Colombia, and I have to say also that there is an American military base near the three communities we choose to do the workshop. So some artists decided to work with this complex context, and simply some artists didn't, or they decided not to work with the context. So I will end. This is the images of the workshop. We did previously a mobile school of knowledge, trying to acercar, to get closer to the people of the place before 6 months before the artists came to the place. Okay, so yeah.
Thank you.
I'm actually going to stand up, I think, and use this thing, if they're ready to go, which they will be soon.
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks to Alessia and everyone at Triangle for the invitation to be here. I'm not going to give a lecture as such, but I am going to do something that's, a performance as such, but something that's more of a lecture. It is now 17:11, and already my words are getting jumbled up, so please bear with me. What I wanted to do is to kind of present some research that I'm working on at the moment, which is kind of exploring loosely the legacy of Paul Robeson, but kind of not really. It's more about thinking about him and his life as a means of working through certain ideas to do with networks, social relations, notions of solidarity, and other things that are concerning me artistically and politically at the moment. Mainly because I realized that a lot of the things I was interested in were actually kind of realized or enacted through his life and story. Just briefly, Paul Robeson, in case you're not familiar with him, was an American actor, singer, activist, lawyer, athlete, linguist. He spoke about 27 different languages. He was born in 1898. His father was someone who was enslaved from what is now Nigeria, brought to America, and escaped at the age of 14. So he comes from quite an extraordinary background to begin with. I was kind of interested in him because I'm very interested in the 1930s, because I feel as if the 1930s, the kind of political dilemma that a lot of people face at that point, and the extremes in terms of what is now left and right, that we're experiencing now, I think, actually kind of relate to what was happening then. I guess I'm keen to extrapolate what I can from that time to consider what to do now. What is the role of the artist? What is the point of us? How can we make a kind of... how can we be of use to society without being instrumentalized, basically, is what I'm thinking about. And also, it's important to note that I'm not interested in being nostalgic or in hero worship. It's more about thinking through time and place. Okay, so the kind of most basic form of a network, and as you can see here, I've used the highly sophisticated, basic shapes you can find on PowerPoint, is essentially the merging of two individuals. What the radical theatre practitioner Bertolt Brecht called the kind of smallest social unit is two people. It's not one person. You know, it's the idea that we move away from the notion that of individual subjectivity as being the place to start something. This is the smallest social unit. On your left, you have Shaw. On the right, you have Robeson, Bernard Shaw. And essentially, I'm interested in the conversation that took place between George Bernard Shaw and Paul Robeson, allegedly at Shaw's house at some point in 1930, perhaps 1931, where through talking about politics and ideas, Shaw allegedly suggests to Robeson that he might be a socialist, and he might want to consider the fact that he's a socialist, and this might be a good thing. Shaw was a Fabian, and I guess at that point, Robeson was already kind of politically involved, but perhaps, well, allegedly, this conversation helped provide a framework, a kind of theoretical framework around his ideas. So I imagine them in, you know, Shaw's drawing room or something, sipping on a brandy or a whiskey, and Shaw says, you know, dear boy, you really are a socialist. I don't know that's what happened, but in my mind, this is what happened. So yeah, this is kind of, for me, a point of kind of considering how principles of solidarity are shared amongst people from quite disparate backgrounds. And this moment in the 1930s is kind of the pivot that I'm going to move forward and backwards from over the next 10 minutes or so, just to kind of explore some further ideas about networking. So another form of social relation is between individuals and communities. And again, one of the reasons I was really interested in Robeson is that I met a lot of people, individuals, who came from communities that had a kind of almost personal relationship with this person, this Paul Robeson character. I had a show earlier on in the year at Sight Gallery in Sheffield, and what was really interesting to me is meeting people maybe between the ages of 50 and 70 whose parents were involved in kind of international socialism, and who told stories of, you know, their mothers making them hush when he came on the radio. It was like a religious experience or something. Equally, I remember meeting someone who he came from a kind of rural background in Cambridgeshire, and he talked about when they would go into the fields to work, they would sing what we now call Negro spirituals that they had learnt from hearing Paul Robeson on the radio. So I'm kind of intrigued in the way in which an individual can kind of make a huge impact on communities that he or she may not belong to or in. And equally, how a kind of socio-political, artistic figure can be a bridge between the notion of nation-states, particularly nation-states at war. So here we have Robeson singing with and amongst a group of striking dock workers, I believe, in Oakland, California, and amongst some Soviet school children at round about the same historical moment. Yeah, so I'm going to go sideways a bit to talk about accidents of fate. I think someone earlier mentioned the role of coincidence and serendipity in the creation of networks, and this is an example of that. So on your left, you have Ira Aldridge, who was an amazing, apparently, Shakespearean actor. He was the first, well, he's called the first Black Othello. That's how history will record him. He was born in 1807 in New York, And he was very popular in Britain and, again, in particular in Russia. On the right, you have Paul Robeson, who's also very famous Othello, and he was supposedly the second Black Othello. So apart from the fact that they both played Othello and they're both from America, what do they have in common? What's the kind of serendipitous link between the two of them? What's the connection? How are they networked, as it were? Well, so Ira Aldridge lived in Britain for a long time, and his second wife was someone who claimed to be a Swedish aristocrat, although there is some speculation as to whether that's true or not. But out of that relationship, they had several children, one of which is to your right, Amanda Aldridge, who was a musician, a composer, a teacher, and who composed under the pseudonym of Montague Ring, which I think is the greatest pseudonym I've ever heard. Amanda Aldridge also taught music to a young Paul Robeson. So you have this connection between the two Othellos through the daughter of one of the Othellos across, 100 years or so. I wanted to talk a bit about the role of empathy in the creation of social relations, or shared social relations, or networks, as we're calling them today. Because it's something that's come up again in various conversations that have taken place. But also, I think it's really important to talk about things like empathy and sympathy and solidarity, these supposedly soft words and soft powers that human beings can possess. So here we have an image of Albert Einstein and Paul Robeson together. Little known fact about Albert Einstein was that he was quite a radical anti-racist in his time. He and Paul Robeson, who were friends, also led a campaign against lynching, particularly in the American South, together for a long time in the 40s. And they made representations to President Truman with a petition signed by loads of people saying, we want you to enforce a law and stop people from being lynched. And they were told, of course, that it wasn't quite the right time for lynching to stop. Yeah. But I wanted to just read a quote from Einstein, which I think kind of illustrates this notion of the empathetic network. Einstein said, there is a somber point in the social outlook of Americans. Their sense of equality and human dignity is mainly limited to men of white skins. Even amongst these, there are prejudices of which I, as a Jew, am dearly conscious. But they are unimportant in comparison with the attitude of whites towards their fellow citizens of darker complexions, particularly towards Negroes. The more I feel an American, the more this situation pains me. I can escape the feeling of complicity in it only by speaking out. So this idea that the only way he can remove himself from the stain he feels as he becomes an American is to actually actively work against the forces of oppression, this empathetic nature, which leads me on to my next point, which is this notion of transcendence. And I'm kind of using it not so much in the religious sense, mainly because I'm an atheist, but also because Eric Hobsbawm has kind of advanced this idea of transcendence as being something a lot more interesting, which is loosely can be described as kind of moving beyond. So moving beyond this notion of the nation state being the main identifier, moving beyond, all these kind of barriers are put up in between people. And I think there's a particular illustration of that in relationship between Robeson and the nation of Wales. So going back to what I was saying earlier about individuals and communities, in this sense, the community is Wales. So this clip here, or this shot, is from a scene called The Proud Valley. It's a really amazing film made in 1940, I think, by Ealing Studios, where Robeson plays an American man who ends up in this mining village in Wales and becomes part of the community. The relationship between Robeson and Wales kind of started way before that, though, even before the conversation with George Bernard Shaw, when in 1928, I believe, he was on the West End stage taking part in a production of Showboat. He sees a group of near-starving Welshmen walking down the street, marching on Parliament, and he asks them, what it's all about, what are you doing, why are you here? And they explained to him that they're marching on London to complain about their conditions, the conditions under which they have been forced to work. So he hears their stories, he buys them lunch or dinner or something, and he eventually he sends a carriage of goods, food, clothing, and so on, to their communities in Wales. This is the beginning of a kind of lifetime love affair between him and the country. Maybe I should move on to the next one. Here we see him in 1960 with a male voice choir. I'm really fascinated by this pianist as well, and the way she's kind of cocking her leg and the whole kind of elegance of the composition of this image. Here we see him at the Eisteddfod. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Apologies to any Welsh people if I haven't, but it's kind of a Welsh cultural tradition that goes back into about the 12th, 13th century, and he's one of the few English speakers who was allowed to address it. Even when, for example, in 1950, when his passport was revoked by the American government because they said he was a communist, it was actually the Welsh trade unions that led the charge against, towards him getting his passport reinstated. And there was also, as part of this campaign, one of the first kind of transatlantic concerts via telephone, because a group of Welsh choristers organized a concert for him. He wasn't allowed to travel, so he kind of called in and sang back to them down the line. So this use of technology in creation of this network as well. And it's a legacy that lives on. This is a 2001 single from the Manic Street Preachers, who are a Welsh rock group. So I guess the reason why I'm particularly interested in Robeson and Wales is, in a way, it provides an example of a kind of multi-generational, multifaceted connection, social relation, network, relationship between people based on a set of shared ideas and values. And this is illustrated by my final slide for you today as well. So in 1963, the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, was bombed by a bunch of racists, basically Klansmen. And there was a Welsh sculptor called John Petts who was in his studio listening to the radio and heard this news. And just like the conversation between George Bernard Shaw and Paul Robeson, I often imagine what was happening at this moment. He was in his studio, maybe making a cup of tea or something, maybe eating a biscuit, I don't know. He was doing something, and he heard the news about this bombing and these 4 little girls that died, and he felt he had to do something. So he contacted his local newspaper, and they put together a plan to raise some money to help rebuild the church. And the idea was that no one was allowed to give more than half a crown, because they didn't want it to be taken over by a kind of wealthy benefactor, Bloomberg or what have you. They wanted it to be something from the people to the people, connecting these 2 points, Wales and the American South. And that's a solidarity between peoples. And so there are stories of, school children giving their pocket money, men in pubs giving their drinking money, housewives giving their spending money, less than half a crown to this end. And so they were able to contribute to the church through something called the Welsh Window. And this is the Welsh Window. It's an image of a Black Christ, produced and paid for by the people of Wales. And I guess my question about this image is, does this happen? Do we reach this point without the influence of Paul Robeson on that nation? I'm going to leave that question open. But I guess why I'm interested in this is because it encapsulates everything that I'm trying to articulate in terms of the radical potential of what we are calling today networks, and the radical potential between people transcending very basic facts about themselves and seeing commonalities beyond those things. And it also provides an example, I posit, of a kind of end point, one of many end points, of a relationship between an artist who was taking the radical potential of the platform to a level that kind of affected him personally, but also provided space, a platform, a framework for people across the world to identify with each other. And I think at that point, I'll end it there. Thank you.
We have very little time, as usual, we found today. But I think one of the issues of this panel was really to kind of look at networks from all these different, from how artists are sort of using it, both looking at what Sonia was sort of presenting, and it just kind of sparked in my mind this idea of network modalities, almost as a way of developing an artwork or developing the practice as an artist, looking almost as a series of contingencies that are just kind of pushing your investigations forward, but also looking at, in relation to Robson, this idea of network as life, as somebody's life being a series of, paths that one takes, but also network as tools for artists to self-organize, but also to gain support from each other. And in fact, one of the things that I was hearing here, and so I wonder whether people understand that, because people were mentioning Danda, Anna, Robert, Ghassan, and it's not really a mafia, but that's how these networks have sort of developed, is through personal connections. There really wasn't this massive master plan, even though Pooja went to Bangladesh and Robert as well. But ultimately, it's these connections, sometimes accidentals and other times a little bit more engineered, but when you're looking at a region and you're just thinking, what if we plant a seed here? I wonder what happens. But this idea of sort of supporting artists, and also artists using these networks to really become part of something bigger, have a local presence, a local strength, and produce what you guys produce, which is completely different. And I think this is something that I was very keen for this panel to show, because there are many members of Triangle here, and they're all very different, and yet there are lots of links in there. And shall we open it to the public? And then I have a question as well, but maybe I can see already hands going up.
Hi, it's Kate Fowle again from ICI. It kind of follows on what you were saying, Alessia. It's like this morning, I was interested in the kind of difference that I can't remember who brought up now, but the difference between networks being a means to an end or a means as an end. And it strikes me, listening to the panel this afternoon, that it's maybe networks as a means to a series of ends, as in, like, there is a need sometimes to have an end result, whether that's a workshop or some kind of outcome. And then I wonder if how that relates to the means as an end, because I think that has to happen over time, and I don't know how much time that actually takes, and I don't know if the network ends up being the institution or if it is the individual. It's like there's a kind of slippage that's going on.
Does anybody want to pick up on
that? It makes me think of the fact that we probably rely on what is immediate and relevant as networks, and I think many of the individuals and in however groups they assemble seem to act as networks when necessary. I'm also thinking that even throughout today, I was thinking I'm not sure if networks need to be very defined. Okay, I'm not sure that the networks we use are necessarily very defined. I think many of them are organic, and really we access them or turn to them when necessary. And when we look back, we think that was a network. That was kind of a support system, which we can define as a network. I'm also thinking whether defining networks with visions and goals and politics and ethics might make networks an end of its own, or it becomes a body that in itself is not necessarily just a facilitator, but rather a dogma or something. I don't know if that answers your wonderings.
I think that what is interesting, even in relation to Triangle as a network, if I can answer from that position, yes, we don't really have a goal. We don't really know what we want to achieve, in a sense. And I don't mean this in a sort of a wishy-washy way, but it is this idea of being responsive and being there and providing certain tools and that being enough and trying to see what can come out of that as being already in itself good enough and not to kind of intervene too much.
Useful?
Useful is a word I hear, yes. Lippi or Zenzele, do you have a view on this?
Basically, I think, like I was saying earlier, networks, they start in a very loosely structured form, and we tend not to relate or associate them to an institution or end up in a form of an institution. But because of the demand that we have on the ground from the artists that use the networks, we eventually start acquiring a lot of elements that makes us end as institutions, you know.
Does anybody want to follow up on that?
Well, I don't know if I can ask a different question. I'm Mark de Brugge from Arts Collaboratory, and I was fascinated by Sonja's story of Paul Robeson, and also this £0.50 donation that people were making for this Welsh window. It's a very ancient form of crowdfunding. Yeah, I would really like to hear from the rest of the panel with the reduced budgets for culture in the public sector. From what do people see as the future of crowdfunding for the work that you do? Do you think that with crowdfunding and the use of social media to access funds from a much wider individual also group of people, if that's possible or not?
So I think you have a very stunned panel on this. I think if I understand your question, it's sort of looking at these ways of creating opportunities for people to become involved and become more entrepreneurial in supporting both the networks but also the individual organizations within it.
Yes.
So how do you see the sort of the development of your organizations in terms of kind of getting ways of sustaining yourself? Am I making?
No, that's exactly correct.
I could talk. I can always say things.
Lippi?
I think that's a very important question. I think for that region, actually, we were thinking to have a permanent space from the beginning, so that we have the space, and if there is no budget or no money, I mean there should be some money, anyways, but to sustain, you need something like what I should say. Like for Britto, when we found that it would be a difficult situation for us after a few years, what to do and what not to do, or if we should stop somewhere, if we will stop somewhere if we don't have any money in our hands. So for that region, we try to make a different kind of like policy to do if we, like Mahbub and me or some other of the other trustees just stay back, how would the organization will run, or
So almost this idea of sustainability being a way to having to think of how to exist and how to manifest as a way of also accessing things like funding.
Yeah.
So this idea of getting a space, I imagine, is that what you're suggesting? So I guess developing these spaces as something a bit more tangible, or developing sort of these projects, is a way of reaching a visibility that allows organizations in the ground to then being able to kind of be visible, be seen as something fundable. Is that what you're suggesting? Would you, Zenzele?
Yeah, I don't want to react to that, because I think in the beginning, when you're dealing with donors or funders, they want to see you in a more organized structure, not just as individuals who are energetic to push and make workshops happen. So they want you to be more organized and have a proper circle that maybe to trust how their money will be utilized.
So this is the constant tension, isn't it, between this sort of need to formalize?
That's how I think we go. We start from non-institutional, aspect, and in the end we go for. I mean, we become the institution. Actually. Yeah.
Do we have other questions?
I can speak. I will speak a little bit about the Elena case, the Elena Producciones case, and it's because money for us, as you have seen in the video, is an issue. I mean, it's an issue and an issue. So we have different approaches to money. For example, we have done a lot of paperwork and a lot of management work also. And I mean, this for us is something that has a value as itself, because it allows us to speak through different or to explore different power lines. That is our research. Our research is about power and how power lines work. So it is in Colombia, it's a nightmare to have public money, but we always do all the paperwork with enthusiasm and with thinking it as a piece of art. I mean, as working with the relation with power. So we have all the archive of the papers we have done, and in this direction, I mean, we work with very little money, but we do it in a constant way, and it's important as money, but it's important as political position to do all this paperwork which artists hate. For other part, we have worked with Elena as an art collective. I mean, as art. So we have done exhibitions as collective, and we have presented our information, or we present this relation, we work with this relation as art. So this is like a way to survive and to maintain our work and to produce work.
I would also like to say
something.
Yeah. Well, obviously, we've also been thinking in Makan about the money, and one of the biggest things we're thinking of right now is whether we can actually approach the whole money thing differently, in the sense that we actually want maybe to explore through some of the art projects. You reminded me as well. We have art projects that we're trying to explore what it means if you actually get into business. What happens if Makan starts a restaurant or starts a car washing business that sustains the space? And it is actually it's a very relevant question with the issue of public funding. Public funding is non-existing in Jordan, and I'm sure in many places. So there isn't even that to worry whether it will be lost or not. And the second thing is, it is practically illegal to take money like a church takes money. I think it's a very good way. And little money does go a long way, and I think it's very good. And Makan used to do that in the beginning. Makan, the first 3 years, did not take any funding at all. And actually, a lot of its expenses came from people using the studio spaces and paying rent, but also giving illegal donations at the door to see films and attend talks. But yeah, we're also we're disillusioned, or something's happened to us in relation to fundraising, and we're trying to figure out through some art projects and what alternatives could be.
I thought. Oh yeah, sorry. Yes.
I was going to say in relation to this question about.
I don't think the microphone is on.
Can you hear me now?
Now,
right.
Yes.
In this question about crowdfunding, I think what is particularly in relation to Sonia's presentation, this question about the time factor, the time that it takes to develop a relationship with a group of people who then feel compelled to be part of it. And it's not something that's an instant thing. And so for me, although crowdfunding has become a kind of buzzword at the moment, it's something that I think develops over a long period of time. That's the only thing.
Did you call it crowdfunding? Is that what you said? Yeah, I was. Okay.
It's Tony. Oh, and then. You need the microphone, so it'll come to you. We'll come to you.
The presentations by the directors of the 4 workshops seem to me like a very success story. And I do know that there are a lot of anxieties, and energy-sapping situations that artist-led initiatives do provide, especially when it gets to not only issues of funding, but what about the response by artists themselves, deadlines? In Nigeria, for example, I know that networking is probably the only way you get either public or private funding. There's a lot of money in Nigeria, but not in the hands of artists and not for artists. So my curiosity is, how did these workshops survive with these success stories at the initial planning stages?
In relationship to funding.
How did they survive? Yes.
Yeah.
How were they able to continue? Do you start?
Yeah, I think for us, for INSACA, it's been a question of, I think, simply hard work in relation to being conscious of the needs of the artists on the ground and the needs of the Action Network, which facilitates artist programs. And then that is seen also by people outside, that these guys are really ready to work and they're ready to service their community. And maybe we've been lucky and we've been connected to the right people at the right time. So maybe, I think that's what I can say.
What are you going to say?
Oh, I was going to mention that basically we did get some money to realize these projects through the network, the Triangle Network, through their connections. So I think they gave us credibility in that sense, but also a lot of hard work getting private funding from within the region, and also by trying to make it as cheap as possible, or as not cheap, as little as to cost as little as possible.
There was a question.
Yeah, it's a very practical question, but for Elena Producciones, I was wondering how you said you had a period on one of your projects where you were engaging with people before the artists arrived. I would just like to know how that fleshes out. What did that mean, your preparation before the artist arrived?
Is that with this travel through the south of Colombia, we started with this program with, which we called Mobile School of Knowledge and Social Practice. And we started with this work, or with this program, through conversations and negotiations with people. Try to see what kind of knowledge exchange could we do with people in relation with the art world, but not in the art world totally. So before the artists came to the workshop, the artists normally have a very weird relationship, especially when they do community-based projects, that they go to a place and work with the people, and they disappear. So that's the reason we started 6 months before with the people in Huachaco, Ladrilleros, y La Barra, with our mobile school. And we have this mobile school in the same way the free schools and the Ivan Illich school works, asking people, what do you want to learn and what do you are able to teach between each other. So we act like Alessio said, like postman, bringing information and try trying to build like a context for them before the artists come, and because the triangle format is very specific. That is 15 days or 20 days in a place. So we were worried a little bit about that, and we did this knowledge school there because of this. But also, I have to say that, and according to the question of the open day, that the open day at the end of our workshop was very important and took a very important role in the workshop, because it was the moment when the artist returned to the people what they took from them. I mean, so the people in these places, because some projects were feeling like aggressions in part of the artists. So during the open day, we could discuss the thing with the people and presented them and have like a conclusion. And
I think we probably have to leave it there. There are many questions, and I've written down quite a few, but there will be, Bloomberg has put some wine and beer, or just wine, I don't know about the beer, so that we can relax even more and ask more questions outside. But I want to thank the panel, and then we'll have a closing by David now. But thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much to all the speakers for an incredibly stimulating day. We've covered a huge amount of territory, from practical issues, case studies, theories, and ways of doing things. Now, we've got a few minutes, and there may be some general questions or points people would like to make at this stage. So I'll take, if there are 3 questions, I'm very happy to take them now, before we go and have a drink and network. But are there any questions? Yes, there's one there.
Thank you. I just wanted to aid our networking. Will we be able to get a participants list with all of our email addresses on it?
I hope so. That will be on the way, won't it?
Yes.
Yes. We're going to have it tomorrow?
Now.
No.
I'm blackberrying as we speak.
Okay. Sorted. Okay, sorted. There's a question. Yeah.
Be quite nice to have a table or something where people can put information about themselves.
Yes.
As another way to, because I really want to know what you all do.
Yeah.
So that would be nice.
It would be it's a fantastic idea. There's lots of tables out there. Can we find one where people can put some stuff? I got some stuff. Okay, sorted. Sorted. Yeah. Is there any more questions? Or requests or points?
Hi.
Yeah?
I just wanted to, it's quite a practical question, I suppose.
Jolly good.
Well, maybe it's not that practical, actually. But we're talking about networks as quite an open space and this open dialogue. But I wanted to kind of take it back to the individual as well, and how individual artists are selected for residencies and for workshops. Is there a criteria? Is there a selection process? Artists selected for their quality of work or for where they're coming from, or I don't know if anyone can answer that. But
Antonio, would you like to say anything?
I wasn't listening.
Oh, oh well, what the hell? Antonelli. Yeah, Antonio. Yeah, that's great.
Yes.
Can Robert have a... Yes, please. I'll give you a thing to help you.
Thanks. Well, that's where accident comes in, the selection of people. And it's with a network the size of Triangle, it's quite clear that you can't have any selection procedure which is universal and involves an enormous amount of bureaucratic correspondence. It just isn't possible with a limited availability of people in offices with telephones. And I do think that the accident aspect of the organization of networks is actually very seriously a very remarkable thing. I mean, networks seem to form into, and workshops seem to form into groups without a lot of intervention from the organization as such. And I'm not suggesting that it's all a sort of magic process, but because clearly there are all sorts of ways in which people relate to the organization, to other artists. But basically, artists select each other. That's the fundamental point. And it may look accidental, but it's not actually quite as accidental as it looks.
Absolutely. Organic peer group chance. Any other? Someone there? Just.
So what is this triangle model that people keep mentioning?
It's all the different models you've been seeing here today, I think. There's lots of different possibilities. Alessio.
It's really not a secret. It's really this very basic structure. I mean, once we're all very clear within Triangle that the whole point of the network is to exchange ideas and to really focus on process, then there are a couple of projects such as the workshops and the residencies that are based on a format which is there to as a template, but it's certainly something very flexible. But the template basically is a 2-week event whereby a group of artists, say 20, 25, half from the country that is hosting, where the workshop takes place, and the other half from different parts of the world, the region, but also a lot further afield, really come together for a period of 2 weeks. It's very much about making work. It's very much about conversations between artists. And the open day, these controversial open days we've heard today, it is an opportunity to really share the results of these 2 weeks of dialogue, process, exchange, experiments, failures, successes with the public. And the idea is really, you know, a lot of these workshops happen in places where the art infrastructure, the visual arts infrastructure is particularly limited. So an opportunity for local communities to meet artists from completely different parts of the world and to ask questions and to have to see how artists who come in for 2 weeks respond to an environment that is very familiar to the community but completely unfamiliar to the artists, really spark amazing dialogue. And the residencies, I know I'm talking a lot, the residencies are sort of like a stretch of the workshops because they're much more about the individual artists rather than the collective group that forms over the 2 weeks. And it's normally 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, whereby the artists enter a particular community by being hosted by normally an artist group or a small organization. And during those 1, 2, 3 months, makes work using the context and the dialogues, again, and the exchange, etc., as a resource to make work. And when I say make work, I don't mean a product. I mean further their practice. So we talk a lot, and we have always these problems with funders because, you know, sometimes you have to justify the outcome of the residency, where at the end maybe you just have a couple of sketches. And thinking about a project as process is the challenge for us, but it's a challenge that we're very happy to have, and that we don't really want to kind of sacrifice in exchange of just having a product that nobody's really happy with.
Thank you. Well, just to wrap up, I mean, we used the word equality a number of times today, and I guess it really does work in terms of our standard as human beings. But what's also become very clear today is that the people around the room, we're not equal in the political environments we come from, and certainly neither are we equal in the financial environments we come from. I guess the other elephant in the room is the issue of world poverty, the fact that 80% of people are actually living below the poverty line. And it's increasingly impinging on this. It's not in just one part of the world, it's all over the world that this is an issue. And it seems to me to be something that, in terms of its political implications that a lot of these workshops are touching on and working around and having to deal with. And actually, in some ways, maybe we hope adding something, making things better. But that's just my way of a thought and a lead into the networking and drinks through into the other room. Thank you.